Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. My name's Garth Fort. Happy to have you with me for an hour or so today. Also, super happy to have Shia Jem. She's really the star of the show. I want to thank her there. She's really going to get up and talk from a customer experience on sort of how she's used Matillion at Citrix, and she'll really be kind of the core of the presentation. But I wanted to kind of just take the hour. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we hear from customers. I want to spend a little bit of the time talking about AWS Marketplace and kind of what it is. It's a 5-year-old service at AWS, one that's growing really quickly but not super well known. We've got tons and tons of big data sessions throughout sort of AWS, and so I'm not going to go super deep into any one of the technologies, but I want to kind of do a flyby, if you will, on sort of how we think about sort of data and big data solutions in the marketplace and some of the success stories we've had with customers as they've gotten in there. So what we hear from customers, a lot of this is fairly straightforward. Customers, as they move to the cloud, it's not all about just moving data. We've got Snowball, we've got Snowmobile, we've got lots of different ways to do a one-time ingestion of data. But once you actually have all your data in the cloud, it's about how do you collect that information, how do you store that information, how do you extract data out of that with analysis tools, and ultimately sort of get more value out of it and consume the insights that come up out of that data. One of the big things you'll hear this week, and I'm going to be able to sort of foreshadow but not go into a lot of detail about what's going to get announced tomorrow, but we're really excited to stand up a lot of new offerings in the marketplace that support some advanced analytics, machine learning capabilities that are going to be sort of announced in more detail tomorrow. But I'll give you a sneak peek of some of the stuff that's coming in today's session. Big data on AWS has been sort of a core part of AWS. We've got what we feel is one of the broadest offerings in the industry. This really got started, in the very origin myth of AWS in 2006 with S3, which now supports exabytes of data, as you know. We've got RDS, which supports 6 different database engines. We announced Elastic MapReduce in 2009. That supports Hadoop, Spark, Presto, and a variety of other open source frameworks. We've got Athena to do native querying on your data stored in S3. 2012, we introduced Redshift, a fully managed data warehouse application, and then we got Kinesis in 2013, QuickSight, et cetera. And so Amazon continues to sort of innovate, listening to customers and figure out how we can actually sort of add additional value around big data scenarios. But like many things, like the strength of our offering, we believe, is really bolstered by sort of the power of the ecosystem around there. And if you look at AWS, the marketplace today, we have over 290 sort of big data solutions specifically that are built by third parties and available through the marketplace. And I want to spend a couple of minutes here, just by show of hands, any users of the marketplace in the room? Okay, maybe 10% of the room. So I might take my time. I'll go through a couple of these slides in a little bit of detail. Even if you've used Marketplace in the past, I want to kind of highlight some of the new stuff sort of year over year from reInvent last year to this year that's come on. We started early on, 5 years ago. It was started really as just a basic, think about it as a library. It was ready-made Amazon machine images, about 250 of them when we debuted the service, so the customers could very quickly get started. About 80% of the customer interactions with Marketplace actually come through the EC2 console. So if you're sitting in the EC2 console and you go to create a new instance, you can choose what the EC2 team calls Quick Start, so they have about 33 different images there. You can choose a community AMI. There are about 68,000 images that have been produced by the community, or you can actually go pull images directly out of the marketplace. And we've got about 4,200 offerings in there, 400 operating systems, a lot of free BYOL offerings, et cetera. When we got started, we had about 15 to 20 ISVs that were participating. Today, we've got over 1,280. This week, we crossed 4,200 product listings. And then increasingly, we've got a lot of offerings in there that are licensed in a lot of different ways, but BYOL, bring your own license, is a very common license type. We have a lot of customers who kind of use Marketplace as sort of preparing their landing zone. As they migrate their on-premise estate from their data center into Amazon, it's nice to be able to go through and basically just pick sort of all of the software that you use on-prem and make sure that it's going to be available in that library through the Amazon Marketplace. And so that's a very common use case. In many cases, customers are not buying through the marketplace, but they're basically using the licenses that they acquired through their own channel or their own sort of relationship with a vendor, and they're just using Marketplace to sort of deploy it very, very quickly. Our library of images, 4,200 images there, we scan them 24/7. They're constantly getting updated. Those 400 OS images that are in there, they're patched nearly daily. CVEs, when they're found, we sort of identify them. We kick images back to the vendors who patch and then republish on a continuous basis. And so we've got this library that is constantly current and curated. and available in 15 regions. Plus, for public sector customers, in particular in the intelligence community, we've got a special marketplace that we created there with a special library that's curated just for customers in the intelligence community in the United States. We've got about 160,000 active customers. That's up from about 100,000 this time last year. And then when we look at sort of the raw consumption, we've got about 481 million EC2 instance hours per month that is driven by stuff that's pulled directly out of Marketplace. So customers use us as a ready-made library. They pull images out, and they get going really quickly. So a lot of the benefits that sort of people will tell us they like the Marketplace, you get going in minutes, not months. Procurement's super easy. You can point, click, deploy. We've got a lot of BYOL. It's great for test and evaluation. We've got a lot of flexible pricing options. I'm going to talk a little bit about that with some new stuff that we announced just recently. And then it's really flexible. So we support all the sort of deployment methodologies that you would expect from Amazon, including some new ones, which I'll talk about in a second. The flexible pricing options, when you think about sort of procuring traditional perpetual licenses from software vendors in the past, we've kind of turned that on its head, and we've adopted a very cloud-friendly licensing model. You can do free trials out of Marketplace. You can do hourly. You can do monthly. You can do annual, multi-year. There's BYOL, and then more recently, we've announced this notion of private offers. And so if you've got a relationship with a vendor that sells through Marketplace, but you've pre-negotiated and agreed upon volume discount, we can honor that for purchases that actually happen through Marketplace. And so whether that's special pricing or special commercial terms, private offers allows you to basically buy from the vendor on terms that you've negotiated that are just unique to you. But everybody in the organization basically gets to buy the pre-negotiated commercial terms and the pre-negotiated price, and we just basically support that and then give you that on an integrated bill. We actually have, for ISVs, we have 24 different metering dimensions. We're constantly sort of innovating. ISVs have a nearly infinite amount of creativity when they think about different ways to monetize their software. As you guys know, recently EC2 went from per hour to per minute billing. And so we've got ISVs that are asking us to figure out ways to go to per minute billing, and we're going to figure that out shortly. And then as we start embracing new deployment types like machine learning, algorithms, containers, Lambda functions, et cetera, many of these are very ephemeral, sort of, they exist very quickly. And they maybe come into existence for milliseconds or minutes, and then they disappear. And so we're going to have to sort of figure out how we can continue to innovate and just keep track with the deployment models that customers are using. In terms of the flexible deployment types, as I said, when we got started back in the good old days, we started with just Amazon machine images. As CloudFormation has come on and Cloud Stacks, et cetera, we've sort of kept pace with that. We support CloudFormation templates for about a year. About a month ago, we announced support for something called basically clusters and resources for multi-AMI resources. So if you have very complex deployments, monitoring, firewalls, and other type deployments might have a head node that sort of collects signals that come from a lot of different feeder nodes. We support multi-AMI deployments as of a couple of weeks ago. Cloudbase and others have listings in there today. Last year, we announced support for SaaS. So for customers that have built fully managed SaaS offerings that run on AWS, you can actually find those, discover, try those, and buy them directly through Marketplace. We support APIs via our metering gateway. So you can, we have about a handful of vendors who are starting to do that. As we move more into machine learning and data sets, we think that API is going to be a much more popular way for people to actually vend their IP through. And then we have this new thing that we just announced in preview this week around private image build. So one of the things that customers have given us a lot of feedback for over the years is that Marketplace is a great place to try lots of different things and experiment really quickly, et cetera. Like one very common usage pattern, the majority of our users will actually use the Marketplace. They'll buy something for a number of weeks, anywhere from 14 to 16 weeks. They'll do a proof of concept, and they'll end up sort of tearing that down and then going outside of Marketplace to do procurement. They do that because they can get a better price from a different vendor, which we now support. They did that because they could get a different commercial set of terms, which we now support custom terms. And then lastly, oftentimes when customers want to go into production, they don't want to use the vendor-supplied operating system that comes with their image. The CISOs in many of our big accounts have very sort of strict guidelines on what operating system patched to what standard actually is going to be used for production. And so with private image build, we actually allow you to take the software out of Marketplace and then marry that with your own custom gold images and then actually build that as a custom AMI that we can then automate the deployment of there into production there. So we just continually take feedback. We support packages in MSI, RPM, and Debian. And so that's a new one that's in preview this week. And we expect that's going to unlock a lot of production deployments going forward. Some other stuff that's sort of new year on year. I talked about private offers. It's the ability to support that custom negotiated pricing and custom terms. We announced Private Link today. We've got 5 vendors today, SaaS vendors that support Private Link, available through Marketplace. Makes it super easy for you to sort of connect your VPC to a SaaS vendor's VPC using human-readable DNS names and endpoints. That allows you to basically keep the traffic from your data center and your VPC to the SaaS provider that's traveling all over AWS-owned fiber, and so that's never traversing the public internet. So that was announced this morning. We also announced in the GPS Summit a feature called Enterprise Contract for AWS Marketplace. This is sort of unique and only available through the AWS Marketplace, but we've spent effectively the last year working with a consortium of about 30 large companies who are purchasers out of the marketplace and about 20 different vendors who sell through the marketplace, haggling to come up with a unified set of terms for all of their offerings that are purchased through the AWS Marketplace. So this involved, somewhere on the order of 70 lawyers in about a year, sort of like looking at contracts, redlining, and going back and forth. But we feel like this is something that's going to sort of unlock a lot of deployment. Of the 4,200 images that we have in Marketplace from 1,280 different vendors, there's probably 1,000 different end-user license agreements sort of that are there, and that's sort of a big headache for legal and procurement teams because they have to review sort of every end-user license agreement to make sure that's not going to put the company at risk. Using Enterprise Contract, companies can rest assured knowing that anything that's purchased through that enterprise contract is purchased under a uniform set of terms that have already been pre-approved by counsel and by the procurement teams. And then lastly, I've touched on private image build. That again is in preview starting this week. We've got software in 35 different categories. The 8 that I'm showing here on screen are the most popular. So whether you're a small startup, a small business, or you're the largest enterprise, you can kind of go from the left. Operating systems are the most horizontal. We've got about 400 different operating systems there. Pick your poison. We've got every version of Windows that you'd want to deploy on. And actually, this is incomplete. We also have Amazon Linux, and then all the commercially interesting versions, distributions of Linux out there as well. Security, storage, networking. Those, again, are very horizontal workloads. Those are kind of the bread and butter of Marketplace today. But the ones to the right of the slide are actually where we're seeing the most growth over the last 12 months. So database, media, development, and then BI in particular has really started to explode through the marketplace. This week, we're really excited to announce we've got over 145 new listings that have come into the marketplace just this month from 35 new ISVs. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit after after she has kind of taken us through her example to highlight a few of those that are super relevant to the machine learning and a lot of the new stuff that's coming out of that. So solutions in Marketplace, you can kind of think about those: data integration, analysis and visualization, advanced analytics, and then IT operational intelligence. This is a small sampling of some of the offerings that are in Marketplace today. And as we get into data integration, a lot of the core of our customer use cases around people getting a lot of their core data into Amazon Redshift and then using that as kind of the backbone of their fully managed data warehouse. Traditional methods for extract, transform, and load have largely been turned on their head in the cloud. Companies like Matillion have built great solutions that sort of extract, load, and then transform that gives big performance and agility benefits. Matillion's got a great solution, but I'm going to hold questions if we can on Matillion. We have Ed, who's the co-founder and CTO, and he's going to come join me for questions on Matillion. And so we'll talk about that at the end. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Shia Jem, who's going to talk to us a little bit about how Citrix is using... You'll have to give us a second here as we get the machine woken up again. You want to do slides or demo first?
I think I'm going to switch to the demo and then I'll come back to slides.
That'll be safer.
Awesome. Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Shia Jem, and I work for Citrix. I'm a database person, and I work with a variety of database technologies, both relational as well as NoSQL. Citrix, as many of you know, has made a name for itself in the virtualization market with the optimal and secure delivery of apps. ShareFile within Citrix is a collaboration platform with the secure sharing of files. Also has sync systems in it. We have custom workflows, and we pretty much support almost all of the document-centric tasks that an organization may need, be it the business being big or small. So what you're seeing here is a real-time dashboard powered by our event analytics project, Redshift, and Matillion. This time of the day, you tend to see more activity in the US and parts of Europe, but later towards the end of the day, I've seen Asia and Australia light up. So how did we do this? This project started in 2016 when we decided to use Redshift as our event database. At about this time, we started working on our event pipeline project. And as part of the project, we enabled our application to start publishing events that were moved into S3 and up into Redshift. Every time you see a bulb light up over here, that is a user on our ShareFile platform doing one of our core operations. Up here, towards the top, where you see those numbers changing, those are our core operations, and the events that we first started publishing line up with that. The very first one are our file uploads. That's the number of files that are being uploaded just at this time. And beneath that, you see about 1.2 billion, and that's the number of files that have been uploaded over the past year. As I make my way along that ribbon over there, you see the upload GB. Those are file sizes. The downloads then, the download GB, the shares, and logins. Each of those are in line with our core operations. So file uploads, downloads, shares, creates, and sends, and user login information. So the event database has been great. We have a ton of events. We have upwards of 4 billion events. And it's been able to drive metrics and give us insight into data that we did not have visibility into before. Just like you saw, we're able to look at average uploads, downloads, the stress on our system. We're able to trend user activity through the day. It's been great. But what we noticed was that we were being posed with questions that went beyond the realm of just event data. We started seeing questions along the lines of, well, it's great that this user logged in, but which account does this user belong to? Is that account an enterprise account? Is it a partner account? How long has the account been with us? What's the cumulative activity that they do on our platform? Questions like that. We realized that to answer those questions, we had to source our data from not just the event database, but also from our relational database systems. Now, ShareFile, our architecture of our relational database systems, is spread out. We have scaled horizontally as well as vertically. So we are a multi-tenant, multi-database system. And as of this time, we have about 30 databases. So bringing data up from our relational database up into Redshift was not going to be trivial. We decided to tackle it anyway. And as part of our first iteration, we chose SSIS. Why SSIS? Because our RDBMS technology is SQL Server. So it made sense to use what we had. As we started building out the SSIS packages, we realized that it was great for transforming data on SQL Server. But when it came to moving it up into S3 and Redshift, we realized that there was no out-of-the-box support, which meant that we had to go out and write code or find plugins to somehow magically get this all up there. It wasn't working. Each workflow took upwards of a week. And we quickly realized that if we were going to make our project deadlines, we would have to find technology that worked for us. Maintenance wasn't easy as well. Every time something went wrong, we had to go through the whole unpacking of the package, go through it step by step, and then we had all this custom code going on. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. The other thing that we needed out of this project was to be able to eventually transition it to our analytics team. Our analytics team is great, but they did not want to mess around with an SSIS package. So we went out there and started looking for a good solution that would work for us. We came upon Matillion in the AWS marketplace. Right about this time, we were talking to our AWS contact who also recommended Matillion. So we decided to go out and try it. Procuring and configuring Matillion from the marketplace came in at just under 2 hours. This hadn't happened before. 2 hours, we had the software up and running. The next step was to do a quick proof of concept to make sure it would actually work for us. For the proof of concept, we decided to go very small. We were going to pick one table from our relational system, move it up into S3, Redshift, merge it with one of our event tables, do some transformations, write it out, and see how it worked. It turned out to be a fantastic experience. Just about a day later, we had it running end-to-end. We had it running completely end-to-end. This is because Matillion has a very intuitive user interface. It makes the whole moving of data from your relational system up into Redshift completely transparent. All you have to do is put in your S3 folder location, point to the table that you want the data to go into, configure the SQL endpoint, and it was done. A great thing is, once you have these three things configured, at the most you might have to change your table name if you had to pull in another data point. It made it that easy for us. Merging of data was easy as well. Now, Matillion has components that allows you to filter data, split data, do everything you want, but also gives the flexibility for SQL users to be able to write their own custom scripts. So this product works for SQL people like me. I prefer coding it in there, as well as, for instance, our marketing team who are able to get in there and get the components lined up and have a custom workflow built. This is one of the dashboards that we were able to build by merging data from our relational system and our event database. On the upper left corner, you're seeing event details. And that looks very, very transactional, and that's because that's where it came from. The trending of the data has come together with the merging of the two data points. We've merged in our relational system data with our event data. Next up, partner usage. Like I mentioned earlier, questions were posed around what kind of an account is this? On the left side, again, you see the relational data. On the right, we've transformed it, breaking it up partners by industry. And below that, you're seeing the active partners. The bigger the circle out there, the more active that particular partner has been on our system. Feature usage. This is a dashboard that has been extremely useful for Citrix. What we started doing was every time we rolled out a feature, we enabled the application to start publishing events for that particular feature. We then looked at the data points in our relational system that jived with that feature and brought it up. What this meant was the moment we rolled out a feature out to the public, we were able to look at real-time metrics on how that particular feature was being used. How is the adoption of that feature? How many people are using that feature? And how are they using it? If they aren't using it the way we meant it to be used, it means that we need to work on our usability more. If they aren't adopting it as much as we expected them to adopt it, maybe we need to tweak that feature to tailor it for their use. This particular dashboard has come in very handy for existing features as well. Those features that we thought were never being used, surprisingly, were being used quite well. So we increased support for those features. And then there were features that weren't being used much at all. Those are the features that we have looked to update as well as potentially even deprecate. So this is just one slide from that dashboard. It deals with encrypted emails. The color coding that you're seeing indicates which tool a user used to use that particular feature. And the red shows that it came in from an Outlook plugin. The green is from our ShareFile web platform. This particular dashboard has been of particular use to our internal users, especially our product marketing group uses this feature. And like I said, every time a new feature goes out now, we roll the metrics out with it. These are numbers around how Matillion has helped us. To date, we have moved about 10 million records into from our relational system into Redshift. The data transformed is much higher because this is where we merged Matillion. We used Matillion to merge data between our events and our relational systems, 1.2 billion. We have several projects in flight. They are in testing at this time, and we expect by the end of the quarter to have increased the number of data points coming in from our relational system all the way up to 50 million, and the data to be transformed to 2 billion. So all in all, Matillion has been a great solution for us. It has helped us scale. We have been able to connect to all 30 of our relational databases and pull data up from them. Maintenance has been a very easy thing to accomplish on Matillion. Like I mentioned, it has a very user-friendly and intuitive user interface. You're able to look at the custom workflows out there. Every component out there is laid out in a good grid-like fashion. And troubleshooting is very easy as well. Speaking of maintenance, we are using Matillion to maintain our Redshift data as well. Vacuum and data analyze are being scheduled through Matillion for us. In terms of transition, we have our analytics team using this. They are an end-user team, and they have adopted Matillion. Our marketing team is evaluating Matillion as well, as they plan to use it with Marketo. All in all, a big success story for Citrix by using Matillion. Before I hand this back to Garth, I'd like to thank Sean Edmondson and Robert Jacobowski, who have relentlessly worked on this project. I'd also like to thank our partners from Matillion, who have been with us every step of the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So I will move relatively quick through the next set of slides just to kind of give you a sense of some of the other big data and analytics solutions that are available in the marketplace: report generation, data analysis and visualization, and then BI, of course. Those are kind of big sellers through the marketplace. You can see some of the leading industry names there. I want to talk quickly about Thrive Industries. Thrive, if you guys know them, they're an e-commerce startup with a mission to sell lots and lots of healthy food. It's a small firm, but they've gone from $0 to $100 million in 14 months. One of the challenges they had when they were scaling up quickly was actually being able to sort of get a 360-degree view of who their customers were and what they were doing. Kind of a smaller scale version of the problem I think she was talking about with ShareFile. They were able to sort of put everything together using solutions kind of ready-made. It was using Redshift as the underlying data warehouse. They used Tableau. They used Matillion again. Tableau as the visualization effort. But they were able to basically get 10 million records per hour moved into their data warehouse using Matillion. And they were able to get 100 users of Tableau up and running within 36 hours. And so again, you'll see this theme. I won't sort of drain it. But again, Marketplace is all about sort of giving you ready-made solutions that get you quicker to value, off the shelf, and then sort of clicks away, minutes away from production deployments, not months. And so minutes, not months. I'm going to kind of move through some of the advanced analytics scenarios around route optimization and location intelligence. You'll see at the bottom of each of these slides, when you get home, if you want to go sort of explore in more detail, we've got category pages that give you a lot more detail on the solutions and the individual partners that are lighting that up. On deep learning, I want to take a minute just to kind of flip over and show you a new page that we launched yesterday. There you go, this one. And so this is a little bit of the foreshadowing. You're going to hear a lot more about this from Andy tomorrow morning, about some advances that we're making in machine learning and artificial intelligence. But our partners in the marketplace have been really busy. A lot of the new partners that have come into the marketplace this year around data solutions, around big data, Trifacta, data wrangling is a great one. You can get into machine learning and data science tools. We've got a whole bunch of new partners there. And then when you get into intelligence solutions offerings from companies like Clarify, leading image processing, artificial intelligence out there. And so this page launched yesterday, and you'll hear more about some exciting news from Andy tomorrow in his keynote. And then lots of great use cases around e-commerce recommendations, propensity models, and sort of how you can figure out who's going to buy what next. So you can imagine that's sort of a core competency of Amazon. We kind of think about that quite a bit. And we're excited to have lots of offerings to partners that are going to help you figure out how to make e-commerce better. I won't drain this this very similar sort of use case, what I talked about with Thrive, Sage, human capital management. Again, it was a company that didn't have a big technical staff, but they were able to find a solution ready-made from TIPCO Jaspersoft out of the marketplace. And they really put sort of a lot of advanced analytics around their recruiting pipeline data. And they were able to sort of increase their revenue. This is a headhunting recruiting firm, if you will. And they were able to increase their pipeline, their visibility, and their transparency back to their end customers, building solutions using TIPCO Jaspersoft. And then let me kind of go ahead and skip. I think I'm going to skip the rest of the slides. I'm going to invite Ed and Shia back up here with me, and then I think we can just open it up for Q&A for the remainder of our session. Ed, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? Do we have a mic for Ed, or should I just give him?
I can fill the room.
You can fill the room. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ed Thompson, CTO of Matillion. She did a fantastic job of kind of explaining what Citrix were able to do with the product. But I thought it'd be useful for anybody who's interested in asking any further questions. We can want to dive into it a little bit more deeply. I'm here to ask questions. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. So yeah, any questions on what Citrix achieved or on Matillion itself that we can answer now, or on the marketplace, of course.
Really?
It was a perfect presentation.
I've never given a perfect presentation. Question?
Is the advantage to you as a vendor in the marketplace easy access for the developers, people who are using the product, or a route through procurement that's preset?
So it's a number of things. I think from the sort of the retail-like purchase experience is one of the important things for Matillion. So the fact that all consumers are getting used to App Store style purchases, and that marketplace gives you that App Store style purchase experience. So it gets them up, get you up and running with the product in 5 minutes, essentially inside your own AWS environment. That's a key advantage. Being billed through the AWS billing system is a key advantage because it cuts out procurement in certain organizations because it can just be added to their AWS bill. The real advantage, of course, is the close partnership we have with the marketplace team. So we do a lot together around marketing and things like that, and promotion of the product, and that's a real advantage from our point of view. There's probably a couple of other things I've not missed. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Garth.
No, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Just to build a little bit on that, the integrating into the customer's bill, I think, is kind of understating it. Like, there is a enormous amount of infrastructure, if you will, that Amazon has had to build to support millions of customers and multiple currencies and close to 200 different countries around the world and 16 regions, et cetera. All that stuff basically comes for free for vendors that sell through Marketplace. And as we continue to make innovations and figure out ways to settle in more currencies and sort of be very customer friendly in the way that customers want to do business with AWS, all that effectively accrues free to the vendors without having to do. Matillion's not a huge shop.
No, that's absolutely right. We're a 48-man business.
Yeah, there you go. And so they're getting they're getting to ride, if you will, on a lot of the commercial infrastructure that AWS has to build for us anyway.
And when we launched our marketplace, we were a 15-man business, so it gives you an idea. And we sell our product exclusively through Marketplace. It's not available to purchase anywhere else. So we've kind of gone on the journey with Marketplace and trusted AWS and AWS Marketplace to develop and take us, and we can see how the features have built out and how Marketplace has grown as we have, and of course the other vendors that are on there. So it's been really advantageous from that point of view. The other thing I was just thinking while Garth was talking there, the other thing that I personally really like about Marketplace is the closeness of the information that we get about our customers. Because essentially what we get is a report every day that we use our own tool to kind of process and transform, which tells us exactly what all of our customers have been doing, down to how many hours of Matillion usage each and every customer has been using every day. And that's brilliant insight for us, for running the business, for developing the business, but also for our sales and marketing teams, because they can see if a customer stops using the product, they can reach out to that customer and find out why, and potentially react to that. And we get all that information provided by AWS every single day, and we can see how the business is doing every single day. And that kind of puts puts you in a whole different mindset in terms of making sure your product is the perfect fit for your customers in the market.
What kind of security is baked into your application marketplace?
That's a good question. So one of the other great advantage of being in the marketplace is, of course, that if you deliver the software as an AMI, as Matillion does, you're delivering the software into that customer's virtual private environment. So it's not like a SaaS solution where when they're processing data, it leaves their environment, the environment that they have control over. It all sits inside their own AWS environment. So customers really love that. What that means is that when you deploy the product, the customer has very, very fine-grained control over what the product can access. So they have fine-grained control about what data it can access, what Redshift clusters it can access, and what other parts of AWS. That's all managed through an IAM role that's attached to the instance at startup time. It's very, very granular, uses the full EC2 security system, which anybody who's done much with EC2 will be very familiar with. So again, Amazon provided technology integrated into Marketplace, giving us that fine-grained ability and really giving our customers the reassurance that, we're not, just because putting the software there, we're not able to do things that they wouldn't expect it to do or access places they wouldn't want it to access.
Yeah, now let me just build a little bit on top of that. So I think that actually was the best sort of explanation. Customers know that when they're deploying from Marketplace, it's basically inheriting all the security and controls that they've already set up internally. What we do above and beyond that is we're actually scanning all of the AMIs sort of on a 24/7 basis. Any new AMI that gets submitted to us, we do kind of static code analysis, and we do a number of different sort of scanning techniques. And we also look for best practices. We had recently had to do a takedown because a customer pointed out that there were a handful of, I don't want to sort of pick on anybody, there were a handful of vendors that were using an open source library that is part of the, just basically the core distribution actually had a clear text password sort of sitting in the root. And there were lots of third-party solutions that had that as a component. And once that was pointed out to us, we actually did a fairly aggressive takedown. So we alerted all the vendors, like we discovered this it wasn't truly a vulnerability, but it was a potential vulnerability. And so we proactively went out there. We alerted all of the vendors that were using those components. We said, look, this is something you need to go fix. Here's sort of our best practices and how you remediate that. And most of them were able to basically take down and repost images that were more secure within 72 hours. And so that assurance that we're constantly looking at everything that's coming through the marketplace, we're scanning it for vulnerabilities. That's sort of very reassuring to customers. There were a couple questions here.
In terms of security, you said that you were getting all the data about how the customers are using the product. So there's something coming back that you can see from the customer accounts. Are the customers able to stop that data from coming back to you?
Yeah, sorry, I should have been absolutely clear on that. So the data doesn't come directly from our product, and it doesn't come directly from the customer account. It comes from Marketplace. So Marketplace kind of decide exactly what we see, and they're very careful about exactly what those data points are, and they are what can be shared as part of the agreements that exist between a customer and AWS. But it's AWS providing us with, I guess, the minimal amount of data that we need to understand what customers are doing with our product. But there's nothing we certainly don't get to decide.
Yeah, we're very cautious about sharing individually identifiable PII. So we can share a lot of aggregate with sellers, by geography, how many customers, how much usage, and geography, et cetera, et cetera. We do have several different mechanisms that customers can elect to make a direct connection. So we have something called product support connection. So if somebody has bought Matillion from the marketplace, but actually would like to have a direct relationship with Ed and his team, we have an ability for them to basically opt in and say, please share the fact that I'm using Matillion in my account with Ed and his team. And then we kind of broker that connection. But that's always with customer consent before we establish that.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that answer your question okay? Great.
I thought I saw one more hand on this side of the room.
Does your application get deployed with a pre-templated size, or do you choose the size of the instance?
Yeah, so You get to choose the size of the instance. Now, for most vendors on the marketplace, different vendors do different things. So some will have like the full range of instance sizes. Matillion perhaps has a slightly exotic approach in this, in that we tie certain capabilities of the product to the size of the instance. So we basically sell a medium, a large, and an extra large, like a T2 medium, an M4 large, and an M4X large. And we use that instance size to tie to the number of concurrent user connections that we allow in the tool. So generally, for someone just getting started with a small team of 2 or 3 people, the medium's a great place to start. And then as they grow, they'll maybe graduate to the large and the extra large. That's something that's certainly particular to Matillion. I don't know if that's really common across marketplace.
No, yeah, and generally we're kind of agnostic. It's up to the vendor to decide. Kind of, many vendors will leave it up to the customer and they'll say, hey, here's our pricing, it's the same, you choose the underlying instance, depending on your need. As we've introduced more advanced capabilities like support for CloudFormation templates and sort of multi-AMI CloudFormation templates just more recently, we give the vendor, when they're publishing through us, to provide metadata that will either constrain or guide to a recommended deployment. Right, so you don't want somebody who's got a very computationally heavy intensive workload deploying to the tiniest possible instance. Nobody's going to have a great experience with that from a performance perspective. And so our tools for the publishers, for the vendors in particular, allow them to basically say, give recommended or in some cases actually constrained deployment to specific instance types. That's all through CloudFormation templates. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, so AWS Marketplace have a system called Product Support Connection, which will allow a customer to reach out to us directly. To be honest, most of our customers reach out to us. Just they will get in touch with us via our support portal and things like that. So we tend to, I would say, build a relationship with 70–80% of our customers. We know, the key people, the people that are using the product. But there certainly are absolutely customers who have decided not to get in touch with us and just use the product. And we see them in the billing, but we know that they haven't contacted us, and we don't contact them because we don't have the details. And that works great as well. I mean, that's still great business, and it's great that people are using the product that way. We've been on the marketplace for 2 years, so we actually launched at re:Invent 2015, and we were available for a few months before that.
How would you compare the features of Matillion versus like SSIS or Tahoe or Informatica or something like that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the key kind of feature difference really with those tools is Matillion is an ELT tool, which it means it pushes down the data transformations onto the underlying database, Redshift in the case of the addition of the product that Citrix are using. We're built for the cloud, and we're built around Redshift. So whereas certainly SSIS, Pentaho, Talend are generalist tools, they're great tools, but they are general ETL, data movement tools. We built our tool for people, specifically for people who wanted to build analytics and data warehouses, mostly where Redshift is but not exclusively where Redshift is the endpoint. So the data is going to end up in Redshift, and then tools, dashboards are going to get built on top of that data set. But the key thing for Matillion is the ELT approach, and that has some real nice advantages, performance and scalability being key, but also some of the usability features that we can put into the product because it's ELT. I encourage anybody that wants to see those directly. We're at booth 508 in the expo, and we can give you a detailed demo over there.
So I can add a little bit to that. What we saw was that with the SSIS packages, we were looking at adding resources to our SQL Server engine because the volume of the data being used here is huge. But with Matillion, it's able to harness the power of Redshift. You're already paying for the resources. May as well use it to its full extent.
Good question. So what we find with Glue, we see Glue as an extension to what we can do with Matillion. So Glue, the real difference between Matillion and Glue is the kind of the buyer persona. So Glue is quite a technical tool. It's really designed and aimed at programmers who wanted to write PySpark and develop their jobs that way. It is an ETL tool, as in the data is essentially moving into Glue and then from Glue to the target. So it has that kind of twice movement of data, which Matillion eliminates. But Matillion is really designed and aimed, and I think she spoke to this a little bit, it's aimed at users who are, it's designed as a zero code tool, really. So it's users who aren't going to write code, but do want that fine-grained control over how they transform their data and how they build out data pipelines. So that's the kind of where we're aiming at. We're going to start building out our product to make use of Glue. We already make use of probably about 8 or 9 different AWS services, things like everything like SES, SQS. We make integration points in the tool to make that really easy. We'll probably look at exposing some of the best features that we like in Glue, particularly where we're things like where we're pre-processing of data sets, sort of semi-structured data, which Glue is really strong at. We'll incorporate that into the tool and make that as part of a single Matillion pipeline.
Can you describe or go into more detail about the Marketplace API? What is exactly offered? How that works?
Which one?
The Marketplace API you mentioned earlier in your presentation.
Oh, sorry. That is a deployment type. So if you, I'll give you like some good examples. So let me go back to the slide. So this is not us providing an API for the service natively, although we do have some APIs. We have what's called a CAS API that Ed was referring to that he can use to basically extract user data out of the marketplace telemetry to understand what people are using his product. So we do have certain APIs that both sellers and customers can use. This one actually refers to the fact that we have some of our vendors actually prefer to make their intellectual property available not as a Amazon machine image or a SaaS application, but they actually vend through an API. So we've got a really tight partnership with both the serverless team and the API gateway team. And so you'll see a lot more about this tomorrow when we start talking about machine learning. You know, this is a relatively new one. I think we probably got about a dozen folks that are currently basically using that. But you'll see a lot more sort of in 2018 as we think more and more people are going to want to make their IP available via an API as opposed to sort of shipping the source code or shipping an image into the customer's account.
So do you have an example of a company that provides one at the moment, or?
Yeah, there's a handful of vendors today that offer geo-informational GIS data sets available through that. So if you want to query, you know, and get sort of, you know, weather data over a certain geographic area, or you want to get gridded geospatial data, you know, there's a lot of geospatial data that you don't need the entire data set, but your application might just want to be able to call into just to get a sip of that data set in there. So those are the ones that we have today. There's a couple others. And I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail, but I think this is something that is going to be, it's relatively nascent today. The vast majority of our business is kind of on the left side of the slide. But we think that as people start consuming more and more Lambda functions, data sets, and then API gateway matures, we think this is going to be something that's going to be a lot more popular way to consume IP from third parties. And stay tuned for more from Andy tomorrow morning, and then we can talk more. And if folks are out of questions, like the three of us, we're happy here. We've got about 10 more minutes left in the session. If we just kind of want to wrap and then take any questions sort of offline, feel free to come up and talk to us as we kind of end the day. So thank you for spending the afternoon with us. Enjoy the rest of your reInvent. Appreciate it.